Hi, this is Joel Schalit, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Battleground. And today I'm talking with our illustrious communications director and French politics expert, Max Sattonnay, about the forthcoming second round of the French election and what it all means. Max.
Thanks for taking the time to speaking about this on these critical times. Yeah, I think we are at a junction in French politics. This is going to be the first time since the Second World War that we have an extreme right um, force that's so strong in the French National Assembly. So yeah, this is very worrying.
It's fascinating. I grew up with a large portion of my family is French, and I grew up with uh, at a probably what would be very rare today, a big part of my family voting for the Communist Party. They were of immigrant background from Palestine and Eastern Europe. They're some old school Jewish socialists. And for them, the Communist Party was the only option for them for many years. But I suspect that, though I'm not in touch much with my family today, that they probably vote center to center right, which is the trend. But anyway, that aside, I've always been interested in French politics for these reasons, and it feels somewhat personal to me, even though I don't cover it professionally, though I have. So my first question for you about the second round and Rassemblement National's elevation in French politics is the success of their electoral success in the European election really seemed to surprise Macron's government. Yet French opinion polls were more or less reliable in the lead up to the poll, and Macron repeated the failure a second time by calling a snap election, which so far has been a failure for him. Again, there's an air of unreality to Macron's behavior, in my opinion. What's his problem? Is it a psychological one that he suffers from tremendous hubris and lives in total denial? You know, or is he just an incompetent technocrat who doesn't understand politics and is unable to respond to political crises?
Maybe there's a third way. Maybe he's a compulsive gambler as well. That's very possible. It has to be taken into account. Um, Emmanuel Macron was quoted after the dissolution of the assembly, saying, "I threw a grenade in their legs. Let's see what they do with it." So he knows what he's doing. He has a plan, and it's a gamble. His plan is to strengthen even further the position of the extreme right. This is something he's been doing for 7 years already, but it wasn't enough. So he's been trying to play a scarecrow. No, he's the pyroman firefighter. So he's lighting his fire with the extreme right, bringing whole elements of their campaign promises into actual legislation. So we've seen legislation that was directly inspired in the program of Jean-Marie Le Pen in 2002,
Yeah.
which is about the national preference, and his law about immigration. And his gamble is that by bringing Rassemblement National so close to power, people and French citizens will get scared and see him as the only way out and the savior. This is playing with fire, and it's backfiring on him. So in the first round of elections last Sunday, 33.5% of French electors voted for Rassemblement National. So the projections so far give Rassemblement National more than 200 seats in the parliament. So regardless of today's final result, of Sunday's final results, Rassemblement National will have a massive amount of MPs in the parliament. So they will be able to push for changes that are illiberal, racist, well, everything they've been saying so far, and they will now have actually possibility to implement these things. He's still playing on the so his gamble is to think, I will hype up Rassemblement National on the extreme right and then create a coalition with the right, les Républicains, his party, and then he will select individuals within the left. So that's his gamble. He's removing La France Insoumise, so Jean-Luc Mélenchon's party, from what he considers the Republican forces. So his game is to put Rassemblement National and France Insoumise as two sides of the same coin, branding them as extreme. And this is a way for him to discredit Le Nouveau Front Populaire, so this coalition of left-wing parties, and also to create division. So after the elections, what he will do is that he will go within the ranks of the left-wing parties of this newly created coalition of Nouveau Front Populaire, and he will select people based on what he considers being good Republicans. So he will most likely remove most of people from LFE, but we've seen already that his tactic is starting to work. So we have a current MP, Mr. Ruffin, who was associated with the LFE for now several years. That because he's facing a candidate from Rassemblement National that actually earned more than 40% of the votes in the first round of election, is now dissociating himself from Jean-Luc Mélenchon and LFI. So it's already starting, and basically he will come and pick from the left and then leave the left in shambles and be united. And yeah, that's the game.
That's a pretty dangerous game of brinksmanship to have to rely on. The drama and the stress that it imposes on the public, and also the EU, is extremely severe. And I can't imagine, you know, why he feels that over the long run this is a legitimate political strategy, because it consistently depends on crisis, and triggering crises rather than responding to crises, which makes him even more traumatic a political leader to have to endure. The kind of existential dread that uh, French voters fear or have now, regarding the political center is very much a reflection of that. No wonder they would want to consider embracing a far right or explicitly fascist party like the RN. I don't blame them, even though I think that French history should guide them otherwise, regardless of where they've been politically pushed by the government.
I think that in these times of crisis, we are seeing the true nature of our elected representatives and the politicians that are running for election. And this political sequence is showing us within the political class whom is here for the common good and will put the interests of the country ahead of their own. And then on the other side, we are also seeing those politicians that will put themselves above everyone else. This race is about blocking extreme right politicians from entering and forming government. But still, we have leaders of different political parties that are democratic fighting against each other instead of fighting against Rassemblement National, and they're only fighting against each other because they want to save themselves. All of these battles that we saw in the left, for example, with Raphael Glucksmann and Jean-Luc Mélenchon and now Ruffin, sometimes it feels as if they don't measure the historical moment that they are actually taking part in, and they don't seem to understand that it's not about them, it's about the country. Well, I have to note that Jean-Luc Mélenchon has watered down his behaviors, and now he's showing that, because he was fighting Glucksmann, saying, "Oh, I will be the next prime minister," and then Glucksmann was like, "Oh no, you will never be prime minister." And so they were that was stupid. At least they seem to have stopped that and to have understood that that was not the time. But now we have Ruffin doing his own thing. They really need to just understand that it's not about them. It's about France, about the legacy. More and more, I have trouble reconciliating everything I learned in history class in the French school system about what France stands for in the world: liberty, equality, democracy, human rights. All these qualifiers for France now fail to actually resonate with what France is doing at the moment. So we are in a crisis.
Um, Rassemblement National's campaign pledges to reduce the rights of dual nationals and immigrants in the labor market are reminiscent of the restrictions placed on Jews under fascism, particularly the Vichy's 1940 Jewish status law, which excluded Jews from the army, the press, commercial and industrial activities in the civil service, and the Crémieux decree, which denaturalized the citizenship of Jews in Algeria. Are French voters the least bit cognizant of this history, or is it that they're racists, that they just don't care? In my view, these kind of politics reflect the actual crisis of anti-Semitism in France, not Muslim extremism. Judeophobia is so deeply ingrained in French society that it influences every aspect of racism and intolerance, even if it has nothing to do with Jews.
In France, I think France is walking backwards, like walking on the ceiling, really. I've seen this crazy image not so long ago of journalists asking Marine Le Pen if France Insoumise is an anti-Semitic party. So when you look back at the history of Marine Le Pen's party, it was created by a former Waffen SS and collaborators. Her dad said that the um, gas chambers were a detail of history
Yeah.
in the Second World War. Like, he's been condemned like so many times for things that he said. Marine Le Pen and Mario Maréchal Le Pen have been openly racist and anti-Semitic for years. It's just since, yeah, for the past maybe 10 years, Marine Le Pen has operated this strategy of trying to diabolize herself and her party, and to clean the more visible part of her ideology, and in her messages. She's cleaned her messages a lot. What she was not able to clean, and she will never be able to clean, is um, her her militant base.
Right.
This is something she can't hide. She's trying to, but she can't. And even though maybe after these elections she might bring new faces, still we saw like she had to come up with hundreds of potential MPs to run for election, and we already have the first cases of one candidate with a Nazi cap,
Yeah.
candidates saying racist things. So her militant base is profoundly racist and anti-Semitic, regardless of what she says. So that's already a first element. When it comes to the French electors and voters, I think people that vote for Rassemblement National, a good majority of them They are fed up with Macron's policy. Macron also showed them that Marine Le Pen's ideas are not that extreme since he's implementing them. So, but if you have a choice, why buy the copy and not the original? So they went for Marine Le Pen since it's now acceptable to be openly racist and Islamophobic.
Yeah.
Then why not? He's also vilified parts of the left, mostly France Insoumise, um, branding them as anti-Semitic. So he's blurred the lines. Then you have the media. So the media is also pushing the same rhetoric. So I'm pretty sure lots of French people voting for Rassemblement National are not profoundly racist. They just find that Rassemblement National speaks to them. It's also the for the left to try and think back at what they've been doing for the past 10 years and why have they not been able to speak to their bases. Why do workers and employees vote for Rassemblement National and not for a left wing party? It's because they don't speak to them anymore. They are infighting. They're too busy doing other things. So, and then another element as well is that we are in an economical crisis at the moment. There's rampant inflation. People are losing their jobs. They are getting scared, and Rassemblement National gives them um, some hope, I guess, because the Rassemblement National finds culprits for all the bad that happens in this world and gives them easy solutions. So yeah, and then there's the we've never tried Rassemblement National, so why not try it?
Right.
As Benoit Hamon said yesterday, former presidential candidate and former
Yeah.
Secretary General of the French Socialist Party. Yeah, I haven't tried jumping off of a building with a parachute. Maybe there's a reason why. But yeah, so I think it's a mix of all of these things. We do see in France that racist, homophobic speech has been unleashed since the results of the European elections, where Rassemblement National won by a landslide.
Right. And I was reading right after the European election a story about a 12-year-old Jewish girl who had been raped and beaten by a bunch of white French kids in Paris. It was big news in the Israeli press. And of course, in Israel, Marine Le Pen is increasingly being rehabilitated as someone we can do business with, and so it muddied the narrative a little bit that's being pushed by Netanyahu and his diaspora affairs minister. Chikli is his last name, and who he was the guy who went and addressed the Vox conference in Madrid a few weeks ago too. He's a big advocate. Chikli is a big advocate of reconciling with the European far right, even more than has been done to date. Previously the only sort of kosher people were folks like Orban and Geert Wilders, and now it's expanding to include all of the really brutal far right people like the French. Marine Le Pen has been fishing for Jewish votes for years and cultivating contacts in the Jewish community for years, and her former partner, Luis Alliot, is Jewish and Tunisian background. So he was. I've written about this before, but it's an interesting story just to repeat in this context, especially. He was coming to Israel regularly in the like I think between like 2013 and 2015, soliciting funding from wealthy Mizrahi Jews from France who had resettled in Israel. And my father was present at one of his fundraising sessions. My father went to high school in Paris, so he spoke fluent French, and my father told me that he turned Alliot flat down for money and said that he spoke very critically of him in that one gathering that he was present for. Ellie had profound experiences of anti-Semitism going to high school in Paris in the 1930s. And even though he was capable of, like many, Israelis of his generation, working across the line, so to speak, he had no tolerance for French fascists and especially for French Jews who collaborated with fascists. That was sort of his point about Aliyah. Aliyah, I'm sorry. So, anyways,
There's something about France that they will. I'm saying I'm French, but I think I'm not part of this thing.
yeah, yeah,
They will need to reconciliate something. For years, when you would speak with anyone from coming from a French family, and you would mention the Second World War, 90% of the time they will tell you that they had someone in their family part of the resistance.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So how can we go from this and then 10 years or 20 years later having them all vote? Basically, history is repeating itself, and they'd rather vote for Hitler than the new Front Populaire. That's exactly like this is one of the slogans that were used back then with the first Front Populaire, and the history is repeating itself. Also, similarly to last time it was the bourgeoisie, the French bourgeoisie, that saw the reforms that Front Populaire wanted to carry out as a massive risk for their bottom line. And today we are here in the same situation. I would say, the only difference is that the bourgeoisie in France now is basically 100 families that own 70% of the economy. But it's basically what it is.
It's really remarkable, and this is a good segue into the next part of this conversation. I have been reading French press about the war in Gaza since 7 October because I was very interested to see how it would get spun. And the framing, even in centrist, news agencies like AFP, of the conflict and of French reactions to the conflict, especially the early responses to the war from Mélenchon that got so heavily criticized, and the LFE, more or less, it seems to me in my reading as an editor that the framing of the conflict uh, uh, had been from Rassemblement and the French right had more or less been bought into by the French media, and so especially mainstream media. And so, for example, in this one AFP report that got carried in Politico in the English edition in Brussels, they talked about how anti-Semitic Mélenchon was, and their evidence was that he was saying that the the October 7th attacks didn't happen in a vacuum. They happened as a consequence of the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories and of Gaza, and of increased friction between the two parties, within this continuing occupation. Pretty neutral statement, which you could have heard come out of the State Department 20 years ago, and nobody would have contested that as anti-Semitic or Islamist. This is how far the needle has moved, and these are the kinds of arguments that are being made by Israel solidarity activists on the French right. You wouldn't necessarily find it, on the French left, and Mélenchon's statement was by no means partisan in the wrong ways. I mean, and I think that this attests to the degree of communications sophistication being adopted by French far right parties, and the actually not just you know not just VRN, but also in Europe as a whole, that want to sort of promote the idea that Israel is a religion as much as it is a state. And so, of course, if you criticize Israel, you're indulging anti-Semitism. And so I think the LFE have to really work hard to break that, because to break that framing and to fight harder, not just on their own behalf, but on behalf of the overall center left, and far left, because regardless of how many of Jewish members of those parties have shifted to the right, those parties still have substantial Jewish memberships, and
It must be
it
like this
matters.
Palestinian conflict must be really, really important to Netanyahu and his team, for them finding it acceptable to create such tight alliances
Yes,
with descendants of the people that were part in the Holocaust.
Netanyahu and his community have a very instrumental view of the Holocaust, and that was that it was terrible what happened, but it helped accelerate the creation of Israel. And so
So what cost?
there is a persistent and very cynical playing of anti-Semitism on the Jewish far right that has been historically consistent, I think, more than anything else, going back to the 1930s, which appreciated the persistence of anti-Semitism in the West, if only because of the value that it gave them to push for increased immigration to Israel. So therefore, even if there wasn't necessarily complete ideological agreement with far right parties in Europe and in the United States, uh, uh, aligning with them was still valuable. But what's changed in recent years, I think, especially the last 15 years that Netanyahu has been in and out of office, has been there has been more of an ideological reconciliation with the European far right that didn't exist before. And then they were just, people on the far.
And they have a common enemy in Muslims, so that's it. So
Yes, it's a consequence of the war on terror and the elevation of Muslims to sort of the principal other in Western society.
but I think it was Netanyahu's dad, actually, the architect of the war on terror. So
Ben Sion Netanyahu doesn't have an original idea in his head. He gets a lot from his father and from his father's late colleagues. Netanyahu grew up in the sort of the heart of the revisionist camp, and he's a very savvy player of Israeli far right parties on his behalf. I mean, even though, for example, you know, uh, his allies are primarily very religious, and he is not. He is a hedonist and an opportunist who knows how to play religious issues, and that's his tremendous savoir-faire, I think.
when it comes to the treatment of the media, because we are talking about this at the beginning, it's not only like the obvious ones, like say news or those media like Touche pas à mon poste, which is from the Bolloré group with this caricature of a representer Hanouna, um, but also mainstream media. Le Monde has there's an article, I think there's a piece by an independent media outlet called Blast that is
Oh yeah,
showing
blast.
now how Le Monde has been hyping up Jordan Bardella. Most mainstream media um, just fell for it or participated in this campaign. Only the independent media organizations were um, able to provide fair treatment of these elections. Then Bardella is also called the TikTok
Yeah,
candidate because of his great success. But
right.
based on what I can see in the past 2 days in articles, most likely his TikTok results were boosted by the Kremlin. So we see the trends. Clearly, you cannot have exponential trends in visibility on social networks that doesn't exist in nature. It doesn't happen. You have always variations in reach. Is skyrocketed. Every other candidate in this race had normal behaviors. So there's clearly something behind it. And this it's most likely Russia trying to destabilize these elections the way they did it with Brexit, with Trump, with everyone else.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. So my question for you is TikTok and C News all you need to win a French election these days?
But the thing is that it started with C News, and then it spread.
Yeah.
The, that's the problem when you have all the media aggregated in the hands of 9 billionaires.
Right.
Well, you make the rounds very quickly and you spread because you have only a few networks, and then you can go from a radio to a TV channel to and that's on the right wing billionaires media outlets.
Yeah.
Where it's even scarier to me is that in the public service it also happens because because the national television and radio broadcasters, their directors are directly appointed by Macron, by the president,
Right.
and there's been a witch hunt within the public broadcasters,
Yes.
and they also have been giving lots of visibility to Jordan Bardella and the right and the extreme right. They've removed any potential dissident voice from their programming, fired several journalists and comedians. So you, if you don't take your news from an independent media organization, you will not have access to the full picture. So for French people, now they only have a few media outlets that, if they really want to know what's happening, that they can rely on. Otherwise, the rest is just communications.
What do you read?
The Battleground.
I know. being,
No,
being
no,
the
no. But
big yeah.
mainly, no, I just mentioned them earlier. So for French news, Blast, le
Yeah.
chef de l'info. It's video on YouTube. They are brilliant. It's amazing work that they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's also Street Press, Mediapart. I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting many. Um, and then you have also independent street journalists like Rémi Buzine, or that people that are, like, for example, when we had all of these demonstrations against Macron's policies, um, they were risking, I think, their physical integrity in going and covering these demonstrations because the police and the fascists were targeting them. And it's a public service that they are providing to those that will watch what they do. So and it's becoming crucial because Jordan Bardella and Marine Le Pen's party will be very close to power if they don't actually manage to grab it. And without a counter power, meaning independent media organizations, then it's going to be a free for all, and they're going to be able to implement their policies and get the positive media coverage that goes with it in order to protect their investment and then go on to bigger things.
We're seeing a lot of parallels between France and Italy regarding the politicization of public broadcasting. It's
And Brexit in the
yeah,
UK as well. And
and the
well, in
UK.
America, you have this bipartisan divide that on the Republican side, that's it. There's no more journalism almost.
Oh no, yeah, it's remarkable. Well,
And
watching,
Spain will be next as well. That's
yeah,
my reading of the situation. But we have here Pedro Sanchez, the prime minister, that has survived so many times and so many adversities. Um, that can't go forever. And at one point, he's gonna have to give back the seat of prime minister, and we might see the same that we are seeing now in France. So different political forces on the left fighting to take his place, and the right wing and extreme right with Vox coming in and winning elections. So yeah, we have to be very, very careful.
In all these cases that you're citing nationally, and as somebody who lives in between uh, Spain and France and the United Kingdom with your family, with your greater family, you have a unique, perspective in terms of you know, how media does and does not work on behalf of democracy and political pluralism. So, do you think that it's time for more robust, progressive uh, media in EU member states like France and like Italy and like Germany that that can push back against big far right platforms like CNews, not just international, vlogging platforms like TikTok, because in Italy, for example, where I live, there's a constant sort of complaining about the hijacking of Rai, the Italian public broadcaster, by the Meloni government, and its politicization in ways that it has never been politicized before, even though Rai has always been, subject to political pressures, as a state, you know, media. And when you look at the Italian broadcasting landscape, I mean, the only alternative to Rai is also right wing. Mediaset, which pioneered a lot of populist broadcasting that has led to the current crisis we're in Italy today under Silvio Berlusconi. So, where is the left wing CNET in Italy? Where is the you know where is there a center left platform in France that's a broadcaster, for example, or a large social media to counter TikTok or CNET? They don't exist. There seems to be like almost a lack of interest on the part of progressive publishers and media entrepreneurs in doing something like that. And I can't imagine a better time to be focusing on fixing that problem than right now, because it tends to be a repeat problem in most Western states. For example, in the United States, you have nothing at the level of Fox News uh, that's left wing. Nothing. You know,
Yeah, but you need money to do this. That's the issue here. Is that
money's there. A lot of
you
tech
need you need
entrepreneurs.
a, you need a few billionaires to put money in it if you want to do the same. If you want to look at the same business model, the other alternative, which is something I'm thinking about more and more, is that I think that there should be more grants for independent journalism in Europe, and it should be something secured within the constitutions of each of the European member states, for example. Whereas um, even if Rassemblement National comes into government, they can't remove this, and we consolidate a counter power.
Yes.
This will be very, very important because Macron opened and showed the way by um, doing this purge within the French public broadcasting service. So when Marine Le Pen comes in, she actually even knows how to do it because because he just showed her. I'm not saying that she wouldn't know; she's very intelligent. I mean, he just proved that it's doable, and also because he's not an extreme politician. If the mainstream does it, why not Rassemblement National? So once again, he opened a very dangerous door to the Rassemblement National. Just coming back to what we were saying before, just a parenthesis about like what he did and throwing this grenade in the legs of the rest of the political class in his country. Another hint at the fact that he knew he was going to do it and he knew what he was going to do is the fact that he put the right to abortion in the Constitution not too long ago. So I sense that he did that because he knew he was going to open the door wide open for the extreme right, and he wanted to at least protect one of the French legacies. So he just said, "Okay, I'm going to save one. That's the one, and that's it. But the rest is up for takes." Just coming back to journalism. So but this is common sense and common knowledge, but it's sad I have to repeat it. But you need counterpowers, otherwise there's no democracy. If you can't see what the elected politicians do, then how can you make sure that they are accountable and that they are not cheating you? And if the press is just working for them, then what? Where do you get this info? You cannot have journalist citizens going after every MP. As I said, we have a problem with inflation. People need to go to work. They can't also do journalism on the side. It's a real job. So we need funding for independent media.
When wouldn't we know that as a European publication? Of course. This all makes a great deal of sense to me. And clearly, we've worked together for a long time. And so we've seen it firsthand from the perspective of being media workers. The thing that is still, just so surprising is how little discussion there is, excuse me, of the success stories where the critical media actually did make a difference. And I'm thinking, for example, of the investigative coup that the scoops that fan page in Napoli got on uh, the Fratelli d'Italia youth movement and its anti-democratic fascist politics, explicitly anti-Semitic politics. It completely destabilized the Meloni government the last couple of weeks and played a role in her disenfranchisement in Brussels after the European election, despite her excellent showing in the European elections. And she's all of a sudden, Giorgia Meloni is completely toxic. It completely removed the halo that's accompanied her for the last year and a half, almost 2 years. It was remarkable. And it also it's been so bad for Meloni that she's considered calling for new snap elections to try to reinforce her legitimacy in Italy while she still has, more or less the polling numbers to show for it. Though I might add that the Partido Democratico is, making successive gains in local elections across the country, particularly recent municipal elections. So she's no longer in a healthy spot in her party's, career in Italy because of two pieces of investigative journalism from a crusading left-wing newspaper, and it's been great. I mean, fan page, it's a terrible name for a newspaper that does work like that. You wouldn't, it sounds more like a fan page, but they're both the opinion editorials and the investigative journalism that they do are first class, and really help make a case for the quality of Italian journalism when it's good, because when it's good, it's excellent. But that's inspiration right there. I mean, uh, you the press has to be able to, if not destabilize the political establishment, frame it in a critical light at a national level, so proper discussions about government policy of any kind of government can be had. And what's going on in France, I can't imagine a report like this being published right now in the French media that would have the same effect. Or, I mean, this is the fan page scoops are comparable to what Correctiv, did in Germany with the secret camera they placed in that at that AFD meeting with members of the the Austrian, or that representative of the Austrian identitarian movement, Martin Sellner, where they discussed expelling all of Germany's migrant originated population. So twice in the last 6 months, we've had these groundbreaking pieces of investigative journalism that I don't think in Germany it changed the political conversation the way it should have, but it was a good thing to have done. And more media should do that. I think the consequences of fan pages work are probably much greater, at least in an Italian context. But here, we need to take stock of this as media and wonder, okay, how can we make the media more politically responsible and engaged? Because the examples are there, the inspiration is there. We just need the money to do the work, and it doesn't mean that we're anti-establishment or or unpatriotic in any way. It's about keeping democracy real and holding political parties accountable. And I'm personally, jazzed at the possibilities. I wasn't expecting anything good to come out of the Italian press at this time, and uh, hats off to Fanpage.
No, really great, really good.
Maybe street press can do something like this.
I
I
hope they
love
do.
street press.
Yeah,
I
no,
think street press is
definitely.
great.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. We need more resources so that these um, pieces of content can reach a broader audience as well. Because because the mainstream media doesn't play its role anymore. They're not upholding the integrity of the press anymore. This is long gone. Um, it's very difficult to get trustworthy information to reach actually the electors. So anything anything we can do to go in the right direction will be really more than welcome.
Well, I tell you, one bright spot in my French television watching in the last couple of weeks, because I've been very curious about, the political crisis in France since the EU elections, has been I've caught numerous news programs where there have been, more or less consistent uh, uh, quotes from minorities about, you know, what their expectation is for the French elections, and it is not uncommon to hear minorities interviewed as saying, uh, Macron, Le Pen, same thing. My situation isn't going to change. There's still going to be horrible racism. I'm still going to have citizenship issues. Cops are still going to, treat me terribly. It's just going to be a change of, leadership, not a change in politics. How do you feel about that?
I think the main issue is that it almost makes sense to say Macron, François Hollande, what's the difference? And that's where the pain point is.
Right.
The left has not been able to articulate a narrative that convinces French citizens that they will work for us and that this will be efficient. That's the main issue here. I don't think that French people are that deeply racist, but we've had a lot of inaction on the left, and this has created the situation in which we are. When the left had power, um, the policies that were implemented, like François Hollande had Manuel Valls as interior minister,
Oh yeah, that was such a
and the
disaster.
guy is well, he's a mercenary, but he's clearly center right more than a socialist. So if the left continues to implement right wing policies, it's never going to get better. And I have a wink, wink to Labour Party in the UK. Um, no, but frankly, like they need to wake up. People don't vote for the left to preserve status quo. That's conservatives. That's
Right.
not Labour. Like, it's in the name. I will start to sound like Josh White. Let's say hi to. But frankly, Josh is right in what he's saying.
Yes.
It's Labour, and it's in the name. Like, they need to start and present a program that is actually progressive. So the the right wing in France has been vilifying the program of Nouveau Front Populaire, using France Insoumise as a scarecrow, saying they are anti-Semitic and they are radical and extreme and so on. It's really interesting to put into context the program of this Nouveau Front Populaire. The progressive agenda of this current program is less progressive than the platform François Mitterrand ran. And François Mitterrand is known for being gauche caviar, the
Yeah. He
caviar
was.
left. And
Yeah.
he like, so this is not groundbreaking what the Nouveau Front Populaire is trying to bring to the table, but it's already a really good start, let's say. And still, people that should vote for this kind of programs, because it's going to increase the minimum wage, protect women, protect minorities, give everyone a voice. These people vote for Rassemblement National. And Rassemblement National, let's not forget. So Jordan Bardella has never had a job in his life. He was elected for office at age 19 until today. The
Yeah.
guy didn't go to uni or school. The guy didn't go to an office in his life. He hasn't got a clue about real life. He is a career politician, and not a good one, because every time he just rejected the debate yesterday against Marine Tondelier, the leader of the ecologists, because he knew he was going to get hammered, because he was going to face Gabriel Attal and Marine Tondelier. He was going to lose because he has no substance. He speaks in comes bullet points, but
Yeah.
as soon as you dig, there's nothing. So yeah, there's something here where I don't I can't reconciliate the fact that so many people still vote for him. It makes no sense. They're voting
He.
against their own interests. And also, one other thing I want to finish on this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's look at the pedigree of Rassemblement National. Is the bourgeoisie, is the high bourgeoisie. They are and they're extreme right, which means that in economic terms, they are really extreme right. They will not support the poor parts of society. No way. Marine Le Pen was raised in a castle. Like, it's not like they're not from the same world. It's not. Like, it's a mistake if you make less than 20,000 euro a month. It's a mistake to vote for Rassemblement National, because they are not protecting you. They're not here for you. So
Even though they've played a populist redistributive tune in the last couple of years as a way of obtaining the votes of working class and
yeah,
economically distressed voters.
so that's another amazing element, is that since the dissolution of the National Assembly,
Yeah.
the program of Rassemblement National, the platform, has been edited every day.
Yeah.
Every single day they change. So most other parties, and Nouveau Front Populaire, I'm sure of it, when they decided to run for election, they published their program, and this program hasn't changed since then. Rassemblement National, every day they change it. When they see that one of their promises might be blocking, they switch, they put something else. They've even been caught giving two different lines, two different versions, live on television simultaneously on two different channels. So basically French electors that vote for Rassemblement National, they are not voting for the program. They are voting for the narrative. They are
Yeah.
voting for the idea and the feeling it gives them. It's not a rational vote. It's emotional. And the left, because they are too busy fighting each other, they are not capable of bringing something that actually will resonate. You had the Obama era where like he was the king at this, no? His famous tweets when he was reelected, 4 more years. You don't need more explanation for this. We need maybe more strategy within the left in order to manage to to create this set of emotions in electors so that they want to vote for a progressive agenda.
The major weakness of the European center left is that it grew too comfortable over the Cold War, and it didn't take seriously the evolving need to, for example, engage with communications consultants and do the equivalent of guerrilla warfare in the media, and over the last 30 years online. The attitude was, you know, typical of social democratic parties that have, more or less, I think, relied on the system working properly to redistribute wealth and to take care of the public with a sufficient welfare state basket, that and therefore people wouldn't need to be communicated to about their politics because they wouldn't have anything to more or less complain about. But since the 2008 financial crisis, that entire mentality has been completely, demystified. It doesn't work. There's Left wing parties have to be proactive about protecting democracy and protecting civil rights and protecting minorities. And they cannot take a necessarily systemic point of view that if you just get a few things in place, the system will take care of itself and persevere. That's clearly not the case. I'm a big fan.
And another element is that they have to do all of this about minorities and differences, and they have to also come with jobs. Um, when you have full employment, racist sentiments drops. It's proven. You People need jobs. It's key before going into philosophical topics and building society. You need people to feel like they will have food in their plates tomorrow. And it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's basic. It's
Yeah.
101, but it's lacking.
And
So as long as people fear for the future, you cannot implement the rest of the program, in my opinion. Like when in France, the left with um, under Chirac, when there was the cohabitation with
yeah,
the Socialist Party, there was still money in the bank
yeah,
in like the country had money, so we were able to to give jobs to people and then also bring social progress. When you have money, it's easy. That's another thing. I would say maybe it's true that François Hollande was a bit unlucky because when he came in, he was hit by the economical crisis. So
yeah.
you had a right wing European Union that also forced him to go into austerity, and like that's another topic. People should also stop voting for the right in the European elections.
Yes.
You can't be Eurosceptic and say Europe doesn't work for me, and then have a European Commission that's been right wing for the past 15 years or so. I don't remember the exact figure, but
The EPP has been in charge for the better part of the last 25 years.
yeah. So that's it. So You cannot complain about the policies of the European Union and say, oh, yeah, it's completely detached from reality, if you don't put in people that will actually care about that. Because here the framework exists and the European Union could work. But if you put the rights in power, then it's just the way it's going to be. Because in the council is formed with head of states of the member states. So first vote properly for your head of state, and then when you have European elections, vote for the proper MEPs, and then you have at least the two out of the three entities, the council and the parliament will be left wing. So then the commission will be left wing, and that's it. So it's not rocket science either. And then we can see and judge the European project and see if we want to be Eurosceptic or not. But first of all, we need to we need to let the European Union implement social reforms.
And that's exactly, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think you put it very well. I mean, for me personally, as someone looking at the crisis in France, from Italy, with my personal connections to France, through you and my family, I can't help but look at this crisis as being one that's as much a product of a failed left as a resurgent right. The left has to give up on neoliberalism, and it has to stop. The social democratic parties in the EU have to stop and push back at the European Commission for insisting on agreeing to austerity policies to bring their spending and their budgets in line with agreed upon targets with the agreed with the commission. This whole model of guiding the economies of the European Union in a partisan political way has to end, because it's not producing results that are healthy politically, both at the member state level and in terms of producing an EU that can answer to citizens, and take care of Europeans as a whole. And that's why I agree with you. There needs to be a point at which the EPP stops being the sort of the hegemonic political family in the European institutions, and the S&D, or what might succeed it, which was probably a conversation we need to have as well, takes over from them. We've followed the Anglo-American laissez-faire, austerity-driven economic model for far too long, and it's time to reinvest in Europe. It's time to reinvest in people. It's time to reinvest in politics. There is no politics to what's going on right now. It's just about power.
And it's also, I think it's also time to grow up and realize that the same way Santa doesn't exist, the invisible hand of Adam Smith doesn't either.
No, hasn't for
Okay,
years.
I think it should be it's time to understand this, that this economy works for 300 families and that's it. So let's stop pretending and put in place what even the right wing commission has been obliged to slap big tech companies with fines. So they are proving that the system doesn't work.
They know it.
Even they have to do it.
They
So
know it.
why does the left keep pretending that they didn't see it?
Yeah. This way we can avoid, having scenarios like this where, you know, you have somebody like Mark Rutte in power for what, 15 years? And he's entirely responsible for bringing Geert Wilders into power because of his neoliberal economic policies. I mean, the Netherlands is unaffordable, and it's a perfect context for populists and far right demagogues to scapegoat minorities and migrants, and and try to replace democracy with you know what seems to be evolving in these in these new far right led governments, which, I mean, technically they are democracies, but I have a hard time seeing people like Orban and if Jordan Bardella gets the nod, the Rassemblement National uh, leaving office. I think these are long term political problems that are going to have to be vociferously resisted in order to end and return to regular election cycles that are healthy and not simply periodic exercises to rubber stamp the persistence of far right power.
Yeah, definitely. Nice. It's crucial. It's really crucial.
Yalla?
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for interviewing me on this. I think it's important for the Battleground to be able to speak about what's happening here in France, and also to be able to spread this message around the world in English. There are other media outlets that provide coverage and analysis, but maybe not a lot of independent media outlets. So it's good to be able to do this today. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Cool.